Frid och shalom och välkomna till dagens uppdateringar den 6/11. Klockan är nu snart 8:30 på morgonen. Och det har varit värsta eldstriderna hittills i Gaza tydligen. Men först ska vi ta och starta med ett bibelord här. Som ni ser bakom mig här på bilden här så är det hämtat ifrån Romarbrevet 13. Vi läser från vers 10 till 14. Kärleken gör inte något ont mot sin nästa. Alltså är kärleken lagens uppfyllelse. Och det ska ni göra väl medvetna om tiden. Att stunden redan är inne för er att vakna upp ur sömnen. Ty frälsningen är oss nu närmare än då vi kom till tro. Natten går mot sitt slut och dagen är nära. Låt oss lägga bort mörkrets gärningar och klä oss i ljusets vapenutrustning. Låt oss leva värdigt, det hör till dagen. Inte i utsvävningar och fyllerier, inte i otukt och lösaktighet, inte i strid och avund. Nej, ikläd er Herren Jesus Kristus och ha inte en sån omsorg om kroppen att begären väcks till liv. Ja, och vänner, laglösheten och mörkret breder ut sig även över vårt land, men vi ska stå fasta, iklädda Herren Jesus Kristus och låta honom vaka över våra liv. Det är det bästa vi kan göra just nu, och överlåta våra liv till Herren. Han vet allt, han vet din morgondag. Han vet vad du behöver. Han är också Herren vår herde. Han förser också med de saker som du behöver för att leva ditt liv och leva din kallelse. Jag vill hälsa härifrån Amir Sarfati en liten varning här. Missta er inte. Jag kan se en satanisk attack mot Israel. Inte bara inom den progressiva vänstern och den muslimska världen. Jag ser det också på ett växande sätt bland de så kallade kristna. Förutom vanliga teologiska ersättningspredikanter finns det vit maktnationalister som trendar på sociala medier, och tillsammans med dem är det som gillar konspirationsteorier. Det här, vänner, får vi verkligen akta oss för. Vi har märkt det själva här, Elvor och jag, att det finns en hel del som varnar för det här med vaccin och allt det här, ni vet, pandemin som var, men som nu har övergått till att håna Israel. Newswire är bland annat en av dem. Fler och fler israeliska judar kommer fram till mig och frågar: hur kommer det sig att till och med kristna nu har börjat vända sig mot Israel? Detta, vänner, är hjärtskärande att höra. Jag fortsätter att säga till dem att sanna kristna fortfarande finns där för att älska och stödja det judiska folket. De visar mig sedan inlägg från människor som de trodde som vänner, och till deras förvåning är dessa inlägg fulla av lögner och satanisk propaganda som Israels onda regering och så vidare. Ja, älskade vänner, det är en sen tid och en svår tid, säger ju Bibeln, att leva i som kristen, och vi behöver sannoliken resa oss upp och leva i ljuset. Vi vet inte vår morgondag, vi vet inte vår väg. Ja, det här är ju en klassisk förnekelse av förintelsen då som de här håller på med. De förnekar ju både förintelsen och ljuger nu om det som hände den 7 oktober. För 80 år sedan anklagade samma typ av människor judarna för att ha anstiftat förintelsen så att de kunde få en judisk stat. Ja, vi har ju själva blivit attackerade utav de här, så vi vet ju det här då. Väldigt otäckt, vänner. Bara ett sjukt och djävulskt sinne kan komma på något sånt här idioti. Den som påstår det är inte min bror och inte min vän, säger Samir, och sannoliken inte Jesu vän heller. Gud kommer så småningom att döma dem, men jag kommer att göra allt jag kan för att avslöja dem, säger Amir då. Ja, som sagt var, det här har vi märkt i Sverige också. Vi kristna som följer alla nyheter och allt det här. Vi måste ta oss till varning, för nu kommer en avskiljning, verkligen. Och det kommer ju att bli de som följer mängden och de som följer korset. Nu har vi 2 klipp här att visa er. Det första då är ju ett litet glädjeklipp. Det visar hur israeliska soldater firar Shabbat i en pansarvagn. Och så kommer det sista klippet här med de dagliga kartorna och läget i kriget. Det får ju tala för sig själv då, men tydligen så blåste ju Israel på rätt bra igår med eldkraft i Gaza, så vi får se om inte kriget är inne i en ny fas här då. Men klippet kommer ju att visa er vad som har hänt. Gud välsigna er, vi hörs under dagen på Telegram och på vår hemsida. Så blir det en uppdatering framåt kvällen då av Elvor och Lin då. Gud välsigna er, amen.
יחזרו בשלום, שכל הפצועים יחלימו, שנחזיר את החטופים, על הסרט גיבנתי! על
I understand that, but let's remember how this came about. Hamas attacked Israel.
Israeli forces' operations in the coastal strip, the Hamas terrorist organization took action. The northern front, under the control of the Israeli forces, was attacked from 4 different points. As the Israeli forces advanced, the biggest clashes of the last period started on the northern line. As Israeli helicopters take off one after the other, the sounds of explosions are rising one after the other from Hamas positions. Clashes have broken out on 3 main points. In the Beit Hanun region, the Israeli army ambushed the fighters of the Hamas terrorist organization. The big break will happen today. Let's move quickly to our video without wasting time. Firstly, the Israeli forces completed their final preparations in the south and northwest points they control at night. Along the 3-kilometer coastline, targets belonging to the Hamas terrorist organization were imaged by unmanned aerial vehicles. After the images were taken from the targets, the first step of the big operation started on the northwestern front. With the mobilization of the tanks of the Israeli army, it was observed that many helicopters started to attack the coastal strip. With the rapid advance of the Merkava tanks, the first 1-kilometer area was crossed very quickly, and the tanks reached Ash Shati. After the tanks reached Ash Shati, armored vehicles started to advance and deploy behind the tanks. During this process, it was observed that helicopters hit Hamas targets and positions on the route of the tanks. In this process, the Israeli forces sent some of their experienced units to the southern line through the coastline to make progress. This is where the most important part of the news started. It was observed that groups affiliated with the Hamas terrorist organization advanced to the points controlled by Israel on the northwestern front. The first attack took place northwest of Atatra. Hamas militants opened intense fire on Israeli forces. Simultaneously, it was observed that attacks started from the southwest of Atatra. It was also determined that an intense mortar attack was carried out in the attacked area. With the start of the attacks, Israeli forces began to respond with some of their reserve forces and experienced troops. For 2 hours, continuous clashes continued. It was noticed that the Hamas terrorist organization was actively using tunnels during the attacks. However, Israeli tanks began to heavily attack the points where Hamas opened fire. With the start of the tank attacks, the active collection of images by unmanned aerial vehicles enabled the coordinates of the ruined points where Hamas was hiding to be transferred to the tanks. I can say that the intensity of the counterattacks increased after clear images were taken from the area. At least 8 houses where Hamas was hiding were destroyed by tank attacks. With the discovery of the tunnels on 2 points, the direction of tank fire changed in order to close the tunnel entrances. With the attack on the entrance of 2 main tunnels, I can say that Hamas's order was disrupted. However, it should be noted that there are many small tunnels outside the main tunnels. These tunnels will have to be destroyed one by one. With the arrival of reinforcements from the northern border on the front line, Israel began to advance into the Atatra area. After entering the Atatra area, a secure line was established. It was observed that the military presence on the northwestern front began to increase significantly. I think that the Israeli forces will clear Atatra with a very large operation because the Israeli forces have to protect the coastal strip in order to complete the siege. Therefore, the clearing of Atatra will be a great advantage, while very important breaking news have moved to completely clear Beit Hanun. After the leak of documents from Jabalia, the Israeli Defense Forces revealed that Hamas positions on Beit Hanun have been identified one by one. An arrested terrorist was interrogated by the Shib Bet intelligence service. The terrorist gave the coordinates of the Hamas buildings and the location of the main tunnel. Israeli forces discovered the 3rd main tunnel in Beit Hanun during this process and carried out a major raid on the tunnel. At the last main tunnel, south of Beit Hanun, the special forces announced a secret operation with a small number of infantry. Approximately 15 minutes before the infantry moved in, the gathering areas of the Hamas terrorist organization around the tunnel and the entrance to the tunnel were hit. After the tunnel was hit, Hamas militants began to enter the surrounding buildings, which was observed by unmanned aerial vehicles. A group headed towards the tunnel perimeter, unbeknownst to the Israeli forces, began to conduct reconnaissance around the tunnel. If Hamas ensures security in the area, it will want to reopen the tunnel entrance. However, a militant group of 20 militants, while reconnoitering the area, was ambushed. As the militant group was partially surrounded, Israeli forces opened fire. The militants were caught in the crossfire and were completely destroyed. After the attacks, it was detected that the special forces started to return and the warplanes took action. As a result of the images collected from unmanned aerial vehicles, 4 buildings where the Hamas terrorist organization was hiding were hit by warplanes and all terrorists were eliminated. After the airstrikes, Israeli forces conducted searches in the tunnels and destroyed Hamas gathering areas. According to the statements made, it was stated that new intelligence materials and a large number of weapons were found, and all of them were confiscated. Hamas launched an operation using most of its forces, but it was not successful. This caused the surrounding terrorist organizations to take action. It was observed that Israeli air defense systems were activated. It was detected that cruise missiles were fired from Yemen to Israeli territory. With the activation of Israeli air defense systems, it was announced that warplanes took off for precautionary purposes. In a short time, 3 explosions were heard in a region close to Israeli territory. It was announced that the air defense systems successfully intercepted the missiles. Saudi Arabia made a statement in a short time. 2 of the missiles launched from Yemen were intercepted by Saudi Arabia's air defense systems. Later, the first statement came from Israel. We will clear all terrorist organizations in Yemen at the right time. The war has entered a very critical period. In many of my videos, I have mentioned that the plans of the Israeli forces are very important because the Hamas terrorist organization uses tunnels, guerrilla warfare, and dispersed attacks. I can say that this is a very challenging situation for regular armies. If you are fighting against a terrorist group, rushing can cause you to suffer huge losses. But as I continue to analyze the area and the operations, I see that the Israeli forces are making a minimum of strategic mistakes and moving forward with correct, cautious moves. A few mistakes have caused damage to Israeli tanks, but such mistakes are quite natural. However, as I mentioned, if the Israeli army continues to carry out operations without underestimating terrorist groups and without breaking its discipline, it can make great gains. The siege of the area has already cut off all supplies to Hamas. Therefore, I can say that rushing will only bring harm. We have come to the end of the critical day and our news. We will continue to convey the events in the following hours to you quickly and accurately. We continue to convey the events to you objectively. You can like videos to support us. You can also subscribe to the channel to make it easier to follow new videos. I wish you all happy